Hello, beautiful people, and welcome to the Women in Theater Rise series. We're your hosts, Hayley Goldenberg.
And Amy Andrews. On this series, we share mini interviews conducted at the inaugural Rise Summit with network partner organizations of Rise Theater.
We're thrilled to uplift these amazing organizations that are working to make the theater industry a more equitable space.
Today, we're excited to share our interview with Marty Strenczewilk of Nations Indigenous Artists Collective.
Hello, beautiful people. We are here at the Women in Theater podcast booth at the Rise Summit with Marty Strenczewilk from Nations Indigenous Artists Collective. Marty, thank you so much for being here. How are you?
Great, thanks. I'm glad to be here.
Great. Marty, could you share your pronouns, please, and tell us a little bit about your organization?
Sure. I go by he, him pronouns, and Creative Nations is a true land back effort of a PWI out in Boulder, Colorado. It was founded about 3.5 years ago when Melissa Fathman, who's the executive director at the Dairy Arts Center, said, hey, we're artists. We can do better than a curtain speech. And so then she just started talking to Native people and said, what could we do, rather than assuming she knew? And then after talking to a bunch of different artists, and I mean very wide, like a painter, a sculptor, a fashion designer, like people across lots of different genres, came up with some simple things, right? Like make space for the art, fund the art, supply resources for the art. And then went out and made it happen. She raised some serious funds from some major private donors, took a section of the building that had renters and said, you've got to go. We're giving this land back to the Native people. And then turned that into a multi-use art space that they gave us back sovereignly. So we operate that space. It's been 2 years now. And so in the beginning, we're like, really? Is that going to be real? And it's been real. Like we decide what's in there. No one else tells us what to do. They don't just assume like, we'll borrow that space today. They actually even they'll say, can commute your space? Because it's really our space. And that last piece, the resources, is kind of the hidden piece that's really important, is their box office, is our box office, finance, grant writing, you name it. So I'm a team of one, and I'm only gone full-time as of a few months ago because we slowly built up over time. First, just artists, then having, a single part-time person. Now I went full-time. I was originally on the board and I moved down to take this role. But we service artists of all genres, all career stages, and I mean that even kids. We run right now classes for kids on traditional Native arts. We are doing actually a gallery show for them in the spring, which we're really excited to let the kids have their chance in a professional gallery to show their art.
That's
amazing.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So it's really cool. And we've also been figuring it out because we're only 3.5 years old. And one of the cool things is like not going in with like this is what we are. We have a mission statement, blah, blah, blah. We've kind of figured out as we go. And the two things that have stood out to us is, number one, we're really focused on healing, because there's a lot of different directions you can go. You can go with the anger or the push people away. And we decided that the inviting people in was really valuable for us. We live in a predominantly white city, and they're a really engaged city. And so it's really amazing to have conversation and say, yeah, come in. We want to talk. We want to change things, especially people who want to try. And the second thing is that we're really most effective when we engage with the community at their level. So a lot of what I say I do is like, I'm not a boss who decides programs. I go out and listen and I go, what do you guys need? And then I make it happen. And sometimes people come to me and say, hey, do you think you could show my art? Or do you think I could do? I'm like, I don't have to give you permission. If you're Native, that's it. Like it's as simple. This is your space too. This is your land too. So we really operate in a very decolonized, kind of non-Western way of an arts organization.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. That's amazing. Yeah.
Thanks for telling us about it. Marty, could you tell us something about a project you're working on right now that's lighting you up?
Yeah. So I'm a theater artist, so that's my passion. And about 1.5 years ago, I went to a residency. I won a national competition. I was really excited.
Fabulous.
And
congratulations.
Thank you. But it was the middle of Illinois, and the director, though he was Native as well, and we had a great connection. He goes, well, we have two choices. You can have Native people or actors, but not both, because we're in the middle of Illinois.
Right.
And we both agreed that Native people was the answer.
Right.
So we brought in all these Native, like one was a family, the mom and her 2 kids joined. Then there were 2 like guys in their 20s from the community and so on and so forth. And I did more developing my play with that group in a week than I did with actors basically ever.
I just got goosebumps. That's awesome.
That's amazing.
Yeah, like the conversations we had about like what these things mean, like how the story really resonated to their own personal experience. And so the play's subtitle is actually The Only Indian in the Room, because often I'm the only Indian in the room. And so like to be in a room where there's a whole bunch of Indians is like, wow, like we speak the same language. We have a lot of the same experiences. And so we'd always wanted to have a theater festival where we could develop work. And it didn't be so difficult to get so many other people like you in the room. And so we started to make that happen. And so I was the driving force for it originally, but then I brought on a couple of amazing people. Dr. Shannon Epplett, who was that director I mentioned, he's out of Illinois State. And then Dr. Ashlyn Baruti, she teaches out in Pennsylvania. And so the three of us have been working on this now since last November. It's called the First Storytellers Festival, and it'll be this first week of October. And it's going to be amazing. We're developing 5 plays, including one of mine. And the writers aren't people you've heard of, which is, again, where are our resources useful as opposed to like, does Larissa Fast Horse or Dallas Goldtooth or like, they don't need us, right? Like they're doing great. Instead, can we find those people who need us? We've got so many Native actors and directors from the community that people would say, there are no Native theater artists. And it took a while to find them. But once we found them, we're starting to build our community, right? And find those people that want opportunities because Denver has an incredibly vibrant Native community. I went to Powwow last year, which we have every year, and I'd never been to Denver's Powwow. 20,000 people go.
Wow.
It fills a basketball stadium.
Oh my gosh, that's incredible.
Yeah, grand entry is like 1,000 people. I remember being like, when I go to my reservation, there's like 400 people, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so like, it tells you we got a bit of scale. So clearly the people exist. You've got to go provide the opportunity, get access to them. So I'm really excited about that, not even because of my personal play, but because the way the writers have gotten excited about this opportunity, they're also giddy to like get to Boulder, to like work on their play, to be in community with other Native theater artists in a way they've never been able to before. So.
Yeah, that sounds so rewarding and fulfilling. Could you tell us a little bit about a challenge that you see in the theater industry?
I'll go for one that I guess has a more of an optimistic end state for me. So what's been really interesting in the development of my role is in the beginning, it was very easy to see that I was going to service my community. I was going to make programs in the arts. For example, we now have these arts programs for kids, right? And that happened because community asked. That's pretty straightforward, right? Servicing your community. That's what nonprofits are supposed to do. What I didn't expect is that by having this model be successful, where the Dairy Arts Center, which is the biggest art institute in Boulder, so it's like a major deal, do this thing where they spent hundreds of thousands of dollars. They gave up real revenue by losing these renters and using their staff hours. Like they're putting their money where their mouth is, right? Like instead of saying I'm an ally, they're actually sacrificing, which is the difference between a real ally, right?
Yeah.
More and more opportunities keep coming to have this conversation. And so last week I was in Colorado Springs with the Fine Arts Center, which is a major art institution. I was on the phone 3 weeks ago with the Old Globe. I was on the phone 2 weeks ago with Center Theater in LA. You know, like these conversations are happening where people are going, wait, there's something we can do here too. And so I'm going to change it from a challenge to an opportunity, I guess, because I'm actually really excited because though the conversations are challenging and there are times where I go, I wish they didn't phrase it that way, or I have to help them through this stuff that sucks to go through sometimes, you know. People are they've lived so many ways for a long time that trying to think about a different way is hard. But having a successful implementation of what land back can look like makes people really go, oh, that is a practical thing. People hear the words land back and they go, well, I'm not going to give you my house, right? Like it's just such a visceral, like there's no tangible way forward, but there are tangible ways to do this. And so I'm really excited because in the next year, we're going to do something in Colorado Springs. Like that's already for sure. I went down there. We've been talking at the very top, executive director, head of their programs. We don't know what it looks like yet, but we're going to engage their Native community and we're going to get them out and we're going to try and do some stuff and see what works and what doesn't work because it's different for every community. You can't just, carbon copy what we did in Boulder.
Right.
It won't work. So I guess I challenge all these theater makers of any level, of any stage, of any location, that these are conversations you can have. And I heard someone once say, it doesn't matter if you work at McDonald's. It doesn't matter if you're a retired person who just attends the theater. Whatever your position, there are ways that you can find to engage to start stewarding these conversations. You have power, whether it's because you're an audience member, so you pay money, right? Whether it's because you sit in middle management and you actually have some resources, you're an actor, like simple things that you can do. I mean, the Dramatists Guild Inclusion Rider is such a good example where people can demand that in their contracts. That's actually a very simple thing because the theater you want to work with would want to have that in the contract anyway, right? So I think that there's a really interesting conversation opportunity where it doesn't have to be the executive director like it happens to be at the Dairy or Colorado Springs Fine Arts Center. I really am excited because there are places I'm talking to someone who maybe might think they don't have power, quote unquote, but I think there's lots of ways these things can happen.
That's fantastic. Thank you. And so on that topic, you already gave a couple of examples, but could you give our listeners some small steps that they can take to make the theater industry more equitable?
Yeah, I mean, so I grew up, I never knew another Native person except that wasn't related to me or lived on the reservation, period, right? Never met one, which I always find as an adult fascinating because I can't imagine being Latin or Black or Asian and just never, ever meeting someone that's the same ethnicity as you. And so often you're asked to speak for the entirety of the continent,
Right.
Which were so diverse in tribal identity and customs and culture that it's like you both want to because you don't want them to not engage, but also there's an expectation. And that expectation, I think, is put upon people because they say, where can I possibly start? I think there's a lot out there that you can make an effort to go learn, right? So I live in Boulder. It's very easy to find out that we live on Ute, Cheyenne, and Arapaho land, okay? I had never heard of the Ute, the Cheyenne, or the Arapaho before I moved to Colorado. And I made it, had no idea. But I went out there and it wasn't hard to learn, like, whose land do I live on? There are tools out there. What resources are nearby that I can engage with to be a little bit knowledgeable? And that's like a simple starting place, I think. And the other thing I would say is to come with a curiosity. I had a really, really amazing rehearsal process about 2 years ago in Boulder, where it's a two-woman play, a white woman and a Native woman. So this is a room where there was a Mexican director, a Native woman, a Native playwright, and a white woman. So she was the minority actually in the room, right? But what was really amazing is she said it kind of early on. She said, I'm really curious, but I don't know how to ask the right questions. And we kind of said, that's great. That's the place to start, is curiosity. And so that's where she started exploring as we started to learn about this play. And the reason we were able to have great conversations is she didn't come from a expected, you're here to teach me. She didn't come from a place of like putting her ignorance on other people. It really was a curiosity. And I think curiosity goes a long way without expectations that it's anyone else's job to teach you anything.
Yeah, for sure.
That's important.
Well, Marty, could you please share with the listeners where they can find more info about you and about Creative Nations and the wonderful work that you're doing?
Yeah, so Creative Nations is creative-nations.org. We got a brand new website, went up like 2 months ago, so it is crazy up to date.
Yeah,
Thank
awesome.
you. It's one of those big steps that a young arts organization
Oh,
does.
we
is
know
like
all about it.
going from like that little tiny, whatever, to like, wow, it's a professional, full-on website, fully up to date. One of the things I encourage people is we have lots of forums on the site for all ways to engage with us. So it's like, hey, you're a non-Native organization and you'd like to engage. There's a forum for that. You're a Native artist and you want to get resources. There's a forum for that. We have lots of those because it's our responsibility if we have access to these resources to make them available. So there's lots of ways to get in touch with us for all the various things we do because my goal is to put money in artists' pockets, right? So I can't do that if I don't meet the artists.
Yeah, totally. Well, go do that, listeners. Go engage.
Go check out Creative Nations and their fabulous website. Thank you so much for being here with us, Marty. It was a pleasure to talk with you. And thank you all for listening to our conversation with Marty Strenczewilk from Creative Nations Indigenous Artists Collective. Women in Theater is a proud network partner of Rise Theater.
Thank you so much to Rise, Maestra, Playbill, and Rise Program Manager Victoria Detres for collaborating with us on this series. Thank you for listening to the Women in Theater podcast. We're your hosts, Hayley Goldenberg
and Amy Andrews. If you like what you heard, subscribe and give us a 5-star review wherever you listen.
You can also follow us on social at Women in Theater Project to make sure you never miss an episode.
The music for this show is written by talented Women in Theater community member Chloe Geller.
Thanks again for listening, everyone. See you next time.
Bye.